Shalom, my name is Todd Bennett, and today I'd like to give an example of the importance of understanding the words of the Messiah in their proper cultural context. The example I'd like to talk about today is found in two of the Gospels, both Luke and Matthew. Luke is discussed in 9:60, and Matthew is found specifically in 8:22. And we're going to look at the Matthew passage starting at Matthew 8:18. It says, "Now when Yeshua saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. And a scribe came up and said to him, 'Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go.' And Yeshua said to him, 'Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head.' Another of his disciples said to him, 'Master, let me go first and bury my father.' And Yeshua said to him, 'Follow me, and leave the dead to bury the dead.'" Now, these are a couple examples of him, people saying, "I want to follow you," and him giving kind of a retort. And Yeshua had a way of knowing the weakness in somebody's walk and in their life and pointing that out to them. And of course, the scribes were the upper class. They were wealthy. And essentially, he's saying, the scribe says, "I'll follow you wherever you go." And he's saying, "Hey, I don't necessarily have any place for you to stay, and we're not going to be checking into the King David Hotel when we get there. So consider that before you make that decision to follow me." So that's pretty easy to understand. But the next one seems kind of harsh. Again, he says, the guy says, "Master, let me first go and bury my father." And Yeshua says, "Follow me and leave the dead to bury the dead." And again, that seems a little tough. At first glance, it seems like Yeshua is saying, "Hey, your father's dead. There's nothing you can do about it. Follow me, the giver of life, and forget about the dead. Let the dead deal with the dead." And again, that seems kind of harsh because, the guy wants to bury his father. And in our modern Western culture, typically if one of your loved ones dies, it might be a 3-day process, a 4-day process, maybe up to a week. And so that doesn't seem too unreasonable to most people. Just, hey, give the guy a chance to go bury his father and then he can follow you. But it's important to understand the cultural context here. Because back in that day, when a person died, they would really be prepared very quickly and placed into a tomb. We saw an example of that actually during Yeshua's death. And the person would be anointed and wrapped up and placed in the tomb, but that was only a temporary situation. The body was then left to decay, you see, because they didn't have preservation processes, preservatives injected into the bodies, or refrigeration techniques, things like that we have in modern culture. And of course, they didn't really, mummify people as the Egyptians did. So the process in the Middle East was essentially get the body wrapped up, anointed, and put that body into a tomb where then it would decay for likely up to a year. And after that year, then the bones would be gathered up and then placed into a sepulcher where it would be added to the bones of maybe generations of family members in the same place. So this gentleman clearly would have already gone through that first process. If his father was dead, he probably wouldn't have even been there because they would have been dealing with the body immediately. So chances are very good that his father was already entombed. And of course, the passage says he was a disciple. So if his father had just died, he might have been asking Yeshua, "Hey, can you heal him? Can you resurrect him?" But that's not the case. So, everything seems to point to the fact that his father had already died, was already entombed, and he's essentially saying, let me finish the process. Let me first go and gather up those bones and put them in the family sepulcher, and then I'll follow you. And of course, that could be anywhere up to a year's in time. So, and that's something that any family member could do. They even had professionals who could do that. So that wasn't a necessary part of the burial process. And it seems like the guy was just maybe making an excuse to delay following Yeshua. Maybe he had other things in mind that he wanted to do. So Yeshua was essentially saying, let the dead bury the dead. That's something that can be taken care of later. He certainly wasn't telling the gentleman to disobey the commandment to honor his father and his mother. Clearly the guy had already gone through the initial first burial process. So with that understanding, now all of a sudden Yeshua doesn't look so harsh, and a lot of people have a problem with that verse, and it just looks like he's insensitive and uncaring, and that's definitely not the case. So I hope that helps to provide a better foundation for that passage so that you can understand it better and understand the context and what Yeshua was really trying to get across to this man, is that when you see the Messiah passing by and he says, "Follow me," that you can't find an excuse. Don't procrastinate. Follow him, because it may be the only chance that you have. All right. So with that understanding, I hope that you found this teaching to be helpful. And this is what we try to do at Shema Israel. We try to put the scriptures into context by going back to the original language, the original culture, and it really helps to amplify things, to increase our understanding and increase our faith at the same time. So until next time, my name is Todd Bennett. Shalom.